Hi, everyone. Well, today we're celebrating the patron saint for bakers, Saint Honore. I'm not sure, I don't have the French accent right, but anyway, he's the guy that sort of looks out for and looks after bakers. So, as you know, next week is Queen Victoria's birthday. I somehow maybe thought it was this weekend. That's why I baked a cake. I baked a Victoria sponge cake. And anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the history of the Victoria sponge cake. Back in the day, in the late 1700s, they only started to get sugar back then. So before that, flour was probably nothing like what we know about bread now, but in the late 1700s, they were able to start incorporating sugar, maybe some fruits and other things. So you know how things change and evolve. But yeah, they started to use sugar in the late 1700s. So then they decided, we're going to, and they quite liked that little bit of sweet in their bread. So they developed a sponge cake. They took egg whites, separated the egg yolks from the egg whites, flour, and sugar. Three ingredients, equal weight of each. A pound of egg whites, a pound of flour, a pound of sugar. Whipped up the egg whites nice and fluffy, then folded and mixed everything in. Make a nice light bubbly cake, a sponge cake, an angel food cake. Similar. So that we go along, and by about the middle 1800s, it was then incorporating the whole egg, and a baker decided that they could also maybe add butter. So now we've got a pound of eggs, a pound of butter, a pound of sugar, a pound of flour to make the new sort of type of sponge cake. Well, you can imagine a pound, a pound, a pound. That's a pretty rich cake. Like not like a loaf, not like a banana loaf or anything like that. This was a cake. This was seriously sweet. So that's fine. So now I'm gonna go a little bit of a sidebar here. Back in the middle 1800s, Queen Victoria would take some of her staff and her entourage and go out visiting. And this particular summer, they went out to a castle out in the Midlands, Belvoir Castle. Now, Belvoir Castle has its own sort of little special. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But they were out at Belvoir Castle, and her lady in waiting, Anna, the Duchess of Bedford, who was her lady of the bedchamber. So she had like a split shift. She would help Queen Victoria get up in the morning and probably help her get to bed at night. So that through the day, I don't know, I guess she did her own thing or whatever. But their lunchtime meal out at Belvoir Castle at that time was a very light meal, not what she was or they were used to. So by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she was getting a little bit hungry. She dipped. I think they called it, she felt herself dipping. So she got the staff to bring to her chamber a pot of tea and some breads for like an afternoon snack. And that seemed to, satisfy her quite nicely. That in fact, she then decided, I'm going to invite friends over for tea in the afternoon. So now you can see how this is sort of building. So that, they friends would come over. Now, I don't know if they came every day or once a week, but anyway, this was began to be an event at Belvoir Castle in about 1845, something like that. So that was good. A pound, a very rich cake. And they would bake it in a Yorkshire pudding pan. 9 by 13. We still use that size of pan today. They baked it, cut it in half. I don't know which way, this way or this way. Cut it in half and spread the bottom part with jam and put the top on. So we had sponge cake, jam, strawberry jam, and the top cake. And they would cut it into long, narrow squares like fingers, ladyfinger type thing. They already had ladyfinger cookies back then. So that was perfect. That was lovely. So that even when they went back to London for the winter, this habit or this event of having high tea carried on in London. And it became a dress-up affair. Everybody put on their best clothes and go out for high tea 4 in the afternoon. Queen Victoria even, caught on, and she thought that was a pretty good deal. So she even advanced the sponge cake to include the bottom layer cake, strawberry jam, and then on top of that, like a whipped cream or a chantilly cream or a buttercream. I'm not exactly sure which one, how that got included in and how that progression, but holy cow, even more sweet, even more butter. So we had cake, jam, whipping cream, cake again, and now we finally even dust it with icing sugar on the top. So that's a very, very rich cake. So we still do high tea. We still have the Queen Victoria sponge cake. It's well known even to this very day. But let me go back to my little Beaver Castle. Oh, I didn't show you my cake. I made the cake. Can you see it? It's not very high. I did put a little bit of baking powder in. It's pretty rich. My husband likes it. When I think about eating a piece, I sort of get toothache, but it's very, very rich. Anyway, so now, Beaver Castle. My great-great-grandfather was a gardener at Beaver Castle just after that time of the late 1840s. I think he started working there, according to what my cousin let me know, 1870 or thereabouts. When I heard that high tea had its origin at Beaver Castle, my spidey senses went off. I got all excited. I texted, emailed, sent a message to my cousin, who is very much a family history buff. He knows, you want to know anything about the Holmes family, I'll tell you, he'll be able to clue you in. So I know he had let me know a little bit of the history about my great-great-great-grandfather, Thomas Holmes. And so that when John and I went to England several years ago, we were fortunate enough to be able to go out to Beaver Castle and check it out. What a thrill. So that when I saw that high tea actually had its origin at Beaver Castle, that was so exciting. My imagination, I could see my Uncle Tom, great-great-grandfather, Thomas Holmes, out in the rose garden, because they have a beautiful rose garden, and I'm sure they did back then too. I saw him picking the strawberries, picking the raspberries, so that they could be taken to the kitchen and be made into a Victoria sponge cake. How much fun is that? Thank you, Ron, for cluing me in. And fantastic day today. Touching base a little bit with family, a little bit with history, and a little bit with cake. Take care. Have a good week. Bye for now.